To the mother-in-law who only landed a husband because she needed the money. My daughter-in-law toasted at the family dinner. I stood up calmly. That is actually your area of expertise, isn't it? Tell the family about that work trip to Miami. You didn't go alone, did you? And your boss was there too. I then revealed an old photograph. The photograph landed on the table like a bomb. Jessica and Gregory Stevens walking out of a hotel in Miami, holding hands. The date stamp in the corner said it all. 6 years ago. Back when she swore she was traveling alone for business. Gregory Stevens is married, Jessica. He has 3 kids. I have the hotel receipts, the flight logs, emails from his executive assistant. Everything. Jessica's face went from the red flush of anger to the white pallor of terror. The wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered against the floor. Ryan picked up the photograph with trembling hands. His eyes darted from the image to his wife's face, processing the betrayal. "What is this, Jessica?" he asked, his voice cracking. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She took a step back, then another. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor. "Ryan, I can explain. Your mother is lying. She's making this up. I have the proof." I cut in. "Every trip, every lie, every time you came back with new perfume and expensive gifts that were supposedly from your clients." Emily let out a gasp. Uncle Arthur stood up and walked out of the dining room. Aunt Sarah covered her face with her hands. The other guests sat frozen, not knowing where to look. "You are a liar," Ryan whispered, standing up slowly. "All this time you made me believe my mother was the problem." Jessica shook her head desperately, tears rolling down her cheeks. "No, Ryan, listen to me. Your mother is jealous because you love me. Do not speak about my mother again." He cut her off, his voice ice cold. "Do not ever mention her again." Jessica backed away until she hit the wall. Her designer dress was wrinkled, her mascara was running, her entire facade destroyed in minutes. "This isn't over," she threatened me, her voice shaking. "I will destroy you, Margaret." I held her gaze without blinking. "You already did your best tonight, Jessica, and look where you are now." My next words were simple but devastating. "Gregory has a wife. Her name is Catherine. And 2 days ago, I sent her copies of everything I have. She has already filed for divorce. And she is naming you as the other woman in the legal documents." Jessica let out a choked scream. Her face completely crumpled. She spun around and ran from the room. Her heels clattered down the hallway like gunshots. The front door flew open, the engine of her car roared to life, and the tires screeched against the pavement. Absolute silence. Ryan remained standing, the photograph in his hand, staring into the void. His face had cycled through every possible emotion in a matter of minutes. Shock, denial, rage, and now, something worse. Pure hatred for the woman with whom he had shared 11 years of marriage. "Mom," he said with a broken voice. "How long have you known?" I sat back down in my chair. My legs were trembling, but I maintained my composure. 3 weeks. I found the first receipt by accident. Then I started looking for more. Emily came over and sat beside me, taking my hand. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" "Because I needed proof. Because I knew Jessica would deny everything. And because I knew the moment would come when she would give me the perfect opportunity to expose her herself." Ryan dropped the photograph onto the table and collapsed into his chair. He put his head in his hands. "Oh my God. All these years. All these damn years defending her, believing every word, making you feel like you were the problem." His voice broke, and he began to weep. These weren't silent tears. They were deep sobs from a man who had just discovered his entire life had been a lie. Emily was also crying silently beside me. I felt it, those tears I had never been able to shed during all these years of swallowing humiliation now wanting to come out. But I didn't cry. Not yet. I still had to be strong. The guests began to say their goodbyes in silence. No one knew what to say. Some hugged me. Others simply squeezed my shoulder. Uncle Arthur returned with a glass of whiskey and set it in front of Ryan without a word. When the house was empty, only the 3 of us remained. The dining room was still full of unfinished plates, overturned glasses, the tablecloth stained with wine. No one moved to clean up. We sat in that heavy silence, processing what had just happened. "Tell me everything," Ryan said after a long while, lifting his head. His eyes were red and swollen. I need to know everything, Mom. From the beginning. I took a deep breath. It was time to tell the whole truth. The truth I had been carrying alone for 3 weeks. The truth I had uncovered, piece by piece, pain by pain. It started 3 weeks ago, I began in a calm voice. I was cleaning your home office, because Jessica had asked me to do it while you two were at work. I found a shoebox in the back of her closet. I wasn't going to open it, but it fell, and the contents spilled onto the floor. I paused. Ryan was staring at me, waiting. Inside were receipts. Many receipts. Hotels in Miami, New York, Chicago. All in the names of Jessica Miller and Gregory Stevens. Double bookings, king-size suites. Some from 6 years ago, the most recent one from 2 months ago. Emily squeezed my hand tighter. Ryan closed his eyes. There were also photos, I continued. Photos of them together on those trips, at expensive restaurants, on beaches, in hotel rooms. She kept everything as if they were precious memories. Why? Ryan asked in a voice barely audible. Why would she keep proof of her own betrayal? Why did she never think someone would find them? Because she was arrogant, I said. Because she was so sure she had you completely controlled that she wasn't worried. I took a folded envelope from the pocket of my dress. I placed it on the table in front of him. This is a copy of everything I found. The originals are in a safe place. I also hired a private investigator to confirm everything. He gave me more information, more proof. Ryan took the envelope, but didn't open it. He just held it in his hands, as if it weighed tons. The investigator told me that Gregory has been married for 20 years to Catherine Romero. They have 3 children, aged 17, 14, and 11. Gregory is the vice president of the company where Jessica worked. He was the one who hired her 8 years ago. The affair started 6 months later, before we got married, Ryan whispered. Yes, I confirmed. Before the wedding. During your marriage. Up until 2 months ago. Emily let out a sob. Oh my God, Mom. How could you carry this alone for 3 weeks? Because I needed to be sure. Because I needed irrefutable proof. And because I knew that if I told your brother too soon, Jessica would convince him that I was crazy, that I was jealous, that I was making it all up to separate them. Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. He knew I was right. Jessica had been a master at manipulating him for years. 2 days ago, I contacted Catherine Romero, I continued. I sent her copies of everything. Photos, receipts, the investigator's report, everything. She called me yesterday crying, thanking me for finally giving her the proof she needed. She said she had suspected for years, but Gregory always denied it. Now she has everything she needs for the divorce. Does Jessica know? Emily asked. She didn't know until 10 minutes ago when I told her. But I am sure Gregory has already received the divorce papers, and I am sure that at any moment, Jessica is going to receive a legal summons as well. Ryan finally opened the envelope. He took out the photos one by one. He looked at them in silence. With every image he saw, his jaw tightened more. His knuckles turned white. The rage was growing in his eyes like a storm. I am going to sue her, he said finally with a cold voice. I am going to file for divorce, and I am not going to leave her anything. Absolutely nothing. She is going to fight, I warned. She is going to say I manipulated everything, that I fabricated the evidence, that I am taking revenge because I never accepted her. Let her try, Ryan replied. I have the original proofs. I have the investigator's report. I have Catherine Romero as a witness. And I have years of text messages where Jessica lied to me about her work trips. He stood up abruptly, making the chair screech. I need to get out. I need to walk. I need air. Emily stood up too. I'll go with you. No, he said, raising his hand. I need to be alone. Just for a while. He walked over to me and knelt in front of my chair. He took my hands in his and squeezed them tight. Forgive me, Mom. Please. Forgive me. For all these years. For not listening to you. For defending her. For making you feel like you were the problem. For everything. The tears finally began to roll down my cheeks. I couldn't hold them back anymore. You are already forgiven, son. You always were. He rested his forehead against our joined hands and wept. He cried like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a child. He cried for the wasted years, for the betrayal, for the time he was never going to get back. When he finally stood up, He kissed my forehead and left the house in silence. Emily and I remained sitting in that destroyed dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of a dinner that had ended in disaster. "How do you feel, Mom?" Emily asked after a while. I thought about the question. How did I feel? After years of humiliation, after 3 weeks of carrying this secret, after finally exposing the truth, I feel free, I answered honestly. For the first time in 11 years, I feel free. I am Margaret Hayes. I am 69 years old, and I have had a life that shouldn't have been as hard as it was. I live in a modest house on the outskirts of the city, a house I bought with my husband's life insurance money when he died 12 years ago. It is small, but it is mine. It has 2 bedrooms, a garden where I grow tomatoes and peppers, and a kitchen where I have prepared thousands of meals for a family that for years didn't know how to value my effort. Before I tell you how I got to that moment in the dining room, before I explain how I discovered Jessica's dirty secret, I need you to understand who I am. I need you to know why what I did that night wasn't revenge. It was justice. It was dignity. It was the response of a woman who spent 11 years swallowing poison in silence. When my husband died, my 2 children were all I had left. Ryan was 33 and had just landed a good job as an engineer. Emily was 27 and worked as a teacher at an elementary school. Both were my pride. Both were the reason I got up every morning, even though my knees ached and my back protested. 2 years after their father's death, Ryan met Jessica at a work conference. She was a marketing manager at a large firm, always impeccably dressed, always with the right words, always knowing exactly what to say to impress. When Ryan introduced her to me, I smiled and welcomed her to our family. But something in her eyes, something in the way she looked me up and down, evaluating my simple clothes and my working hands, put me on alert. They got married 8 months later. I helped with the wedding. I spent $3,000 of my savings to pay for part of the catering because I wanted my son to be happy. Jessica thanked me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and a hug that lasted exactly 2 seconds. The first few months were tolerable. Jessica was polite to me, though distant. She never invited me to her house. She never called to ask how I was. When I visited them, there was always an excuse to cut the visit short. They had to go out. They were waiting for an important call. She had a headache. But I accepted it all because my son seemed happy, and that was the only thing that mattered. Things started to change when I turned 62. That was the year my diabetes got worse, and I had to start taking insulin daily. It was also the year I had a fall at home that left me with a fractured hip. I needed surgery and 3 months of recovery. Ryan insisted that I move in with them temporarily while I recovered. Jessica agreed, but her face when she did told me everything I needed to know. Those 3 months were a silent hell. Jessica was never cruel in an obvious way. She never shouted at me or insulted me directly. Her cruelty was more subtle, more calculated, more effective. She left my medicine in high places where I couldn't reach it with my crutches. She prepared meals with too much salt or too much sugar that she knew I couldn't eat because of my diabetes. She turned the television volume up high when I tried to rest. And when Ryan came home from work, she transformed into the perfect wife and the concerned daughter-in-law who was doing everything possible to take care of her poor, sick mother-in-law. When I was finally able to return to my house, I breathed a sigh of relief. But the damage was already done. Jessica had established the narrative. I was the problem mother-in-law, the sick old woman who needed constant attention, the burden she had endured with the patience of a saint. And Ryan believed every word. The following years were a slow but steady escalation. Jessica took more and more control over my son's life. Little by little, she pushed him away from me. The visits became less frequent, the phone calls shorter. Family celebrations began to take place in expensive restaurants, where I felt out of place with my simple clothes and my limited budget. And always, always, Jessica found a way to make me feel small. "Oh, Margaret, that dress is so cute. Is it vintage? It looks very 70s. Margaret, don't worry about bringing anything for dinner. You know your cooking is very traditional. Ryan, honey, your mom looks tired. Maybe she should go home early to rest." Every comment was a pinprick wrapped in velvet. Every smile was a trap, and I endured them all because I didn't want to cause problems, because I didn't want my son to have to choose between his wife and his mother, because I knew that if he had to choose, he probably wouldn't choose me. My survivor's benefits were about $1,200 a month. With that, I paid my property taxes, my utilities, my medicines which cost $150, my food. Money was always tight, but I never complained. I worked cleaning houses twice a week to earn a little extra. My knees protested, my back ached. But I did it because I needed to maintain my independence. Because I knew the day I depended completely on my son would be the day Jessica held all the power over me. Emily saw what was happening, but she didn't know how to help. She and Jessica never got along. Jessica treated her with the same polite disdain she treated me with. Emily tried to talk to Ryan several times, but he always defended his wife. Jessica is under a lot of stress at work. Jessica didn't mean it maliciously. Mom, you're being too sensitive. Those were his answers. And with each one, I felt the chasm between us grow a little wider. I spent my birthdays 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, and 68, swallowing humiliation, smiling when I wanted to cry, nodding when I wanted to scream, accepting crumbs of attention from my own son because it was better than nothing. And all that time, Jessica kept building her image of the perfect wife, the successful woman, the patient daughter-in-law enduring a difficult mother-in-law. But I wasn't stupid. I was old, but not blind. I saw things. I noticed details. Like the times Jessica came home late and her excuse was always a work meeting. Like the expensive perfume she wore when she supposedly went on business trips but never wore at home. Like the way she constantly checked her phone and placed it face down when Ryan entered the room. Like the credit card bills with charges from luxury hotels that she justified as corporate expenses. I stored those observations in my mind like seeds that might one day sprout into something more. I didn't know what. I didn't know when. I just knew something wasn't right in that marriage, and that one day the truth would come to light. And then that day arrived 3 weeks ago. The day that changed everything. The day I went to Ryan and Jessica's house because she had asked me to clean the study while they were at work. Me, the 69-year-old mother-in-law with arthritis and diabetes, cleaning the house of the woman who earned $6,000 a month. But I accepted because that way I could see my son when he returned from work, even if only for half an hour. I was cleaning the closet in the study when a shoebox fell from the top shelf. It opened upon hitting the floor, and all its contents spilled onto the carpet. Receipts, photographs, documents. At first, I was going to put it all back in the box without looking. But then I saw a photo. Jessica and a man who wasn't my son, hugging, smiling. Behind them, the sign of a hotel in Miami was clearly visible. My hands trembled as I picked up that photo. Then I picked up another, and one more. Each one was worse than the last. Jessica with that man in restaurants, on beaches, in hotel rooms. Some photos had dates. The oldest was from 6 years ago, the most recent from 3 months ago. I picked up the receipts with shaking hands. Hotel Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, 2 nights. Double room, under the names Jessica Miller and Gregory Stevens. The Plaza, New York, 3 nights, suite, same names. The Peninsula, Chicago, 1 night, deluxe room, same names. There were dozens of receipts, literally dozens. I sat on the floor of the study with all that evidence scattered around me and cried. I cried for my son who didn't know his wife was betraying him. I cried for all the years I had spent feeling guilty, believing that perhaps I was the problem. I cried for the cruelty of a woman who cheated on my son while convincing him that I was the villain. But after crying, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep this secret. I wasn't going to protect Jessica. But I also wasn't going to run to tell Ryan without solid proof, because I knew Jessica would deny everything. She would say I had invented the photos, that I had forged the receipts, that I was desperate to destroy her marriage because I was jealous. I took my phone and photographed every receipt, every photo, every document. I saved everything on my phone, and then on a USB drive I bought that same afternoon. I put everything back in the box exactly as it was and returned it to the shelf. Jessica would never know I had discovered her secret. Not yet. 3 months before that dinner where everything exploded, my life was an exhausting routine that repeated day after day without rest. I woke up every morning at 6, although my body screamed for me to stay in bed. The arthritis in my hands had worsened over the last year, and I needed almost half an hour of gentle exercises before I could close my fists without pain. My knees creaked every time I stood up. My back protested when I bent down to pick something up from the floor, but I didn't have the luxury of complaining. I was 69 years old, but my body felt 90. At 7, I took my insulin and ate breakfast: 2 scrambled eggs, a tortilla, a few beans, no sugar, no excess salt. My diabetes gave me no truce, and I had learned to be strict with myself because I couldn't afford another hospitalization. The last time I had spent $2,000 I didn't have, and it took me 8 months to pay it off. Mondays and Thursdays, I cleaned Mrs. Samantha Torres's house, a neighbor who paid me $50 for 5 hours of work. Mopping, dusting, cleaning bathrooms, washing windows. My back killed me. But those $100 a week were the difference between eating well or going hungry the last days of the month. Mrs. Samantha was kind to me. She let me rest when she saw I was struggling to breathe. She made me fresh water. She gave me food when she had leftovers from her family gatherings. Tuesdays, I went to the health center for my monthly checkup. The doctor always told me the same thing. "Margaret, you need to lose weight. You need to exercise more. You need to reduce stress." I nodded and smiled because there was no point explaining to him that when you are 69 years old and live on $1,200 a month, stress isn't something you can simply eliminate from your life. Stress is your life. Wednesdays, I visited Emily. She lived in a small apartment near the school where she worked. We drank coffee together and talked about everything except Ryan and Jessica. Emily knew that subject hurt me too much. She knew that every time we mentioned Jessica, I ended up with a lump in my throat that lasted the rest of the day. So we talked about her students, her plans for the holidays, the movies she had seen. Those afternoons with my daughter were the only moment of real peace in my week. Fridays, I did my monthly grocery shopping. I walked the 8 blocks to the supermarket because I couldn't justify the bus fare round trip. I took my shopping cart with wheels and bought only the essentials: rice, beans, eggs, chicken, vegetables. Nothing processed because it was more expensive and less healthy. I calculated every dollar, every penny. $70 had to last me for food all month. When I got home, my feet hurt so much I had to soak them in warm water for half an hour before I could put the groceries away. Saturdays and Sundays, I tried to rest, but there was always something to do. Repair something broken in the house. Wash my clothes by hand because the washer had stopped working 6 months ago, and I didn't have money to fix it. Water my garden. Pull weeds. Tend to my tomato and pepper plants that gave me vegetables and saved me a few dollars every week. That was my life. Simple, exhausting, lonely. I didn't complain because I had known worse times. When my husband died and I was left alone with 2 children to support. When I worked 14 hours a day cleaning offices so they could go to college. When I spent entire nights sewing clothes to sell and earn a few extra dollars. Compared to those times, my current life was almost comfortable. But the loneliness weighed on me. It weighed more than the physical fatigue. It weighed more than the pain in my joints. Seeing other women my age, surrounded by their families, their grandchildren, celebrating birthdays and holidays together, while I spent most of my days alone in my house, hurt in a way I couldn't explain with words. Ryan called me once a week, always on Sunday nights. The conversation lasted exactly 10 minutes. He asked me how I was. I said fine. He told me briefly about his work. I asked him if he needed anything. He said no. Then I would hear Jessica's voice in the background saying something, and Ryan would rush to say goodbye. "Love you, Mom. Talk next week." And he would hang up. 10 minutes of my son once a week. That was all I had left of the relationship that once was the most important thing in my life. Visits were even rarer. Maybe once a month Ryan came alone to my house for an hour. He never brought Jessica. He said she was busy with work or didn't feel well. I knew the truth. Jessica didn't want to step foot in my humble house. She didn't want to sit on my old furniture or drink coffee from my chipped mugs. She didn't want her expensive shoes touching my concrete floor. And Ryan, my son who had once promised to always take care of me, had accepted that situation without protest. During those 3 months before the dinner, after having discovered Jessica's secret, My life continued the same on the surface, but everything had changed inside. I knew the truth now. I knew that the woman who had made me feel less for years, who had subtly humiliated me at every opportunity, who had pushed my son away with lies and manipulations, was herself a liar and a traitor. But I said nothing. Not yet. Because I needed more than the photos and receipts I had found. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed a case so solid that not even Jessica, with all her smooth talk, could deny it. 2 days after finding the box, I went to a coffee shop with Wi-Fi and searched for the name I had seen on the receipts. Gregory Stevens. It wasn't difficult to find him. He was the vice president of sales at the same company where Jessica worked, 52 years old, married to Catherine Romero, 3 children. His LinkedIn profile showed a photo of an attractive man with graying hair and a confident smile. The same man from the photographs with Jessica. I searched more. I found his wife Catherine's Facebook profile. It was full of family photos, Gregory with his kids at soccer games, beach vacations, anniversary dinners, a seemingly perfect family that had no idea of the double life he was leading. I felt a pang of compassion for that woman. She was another victim of Jessica and Gregory's betrayal. She deserved to know the truth as much as my son, but it wasn't the moment yet. First, I needed more information. I spent $500. I didn't have to hire a private investigator. I found a budget-friendly one who worked from his home and accepted cash payments. I gave him the photos, the receipts, the names. I told him exactly what I needed. Proof that the affair was real and recent. Exact dates, places, everything documented. The investigator, a man named Sam Reynolds, about 40 years old, looked at me with a mix of pity and respect when I told him the story. "Mrs. Hayes," he told me, "I'm going to get you everything you need. And don't worry about the full payment. $500 is fine. I have a mother too, and I wouldn't like anyone to treat her the way you've been treated." 2 weeks later, Sam called me. He had everything. Phone records between Jessica and Gregory totaling hours each week. Text messages he had been able to recover from cloud backups. Work emails that were anything but professional. New photographs he had taken following them during one of their lunch meetings that ended at a downtown hotel. And most importantly, he had the testimony of Gregory's secretary, a woman named Lauren, who was sick of covering for her boss's lies and had decided to speak. Lauren told me everything when I contacted her. She told me the affair had started 7 years ago, not 6 as I had thought. She told me Gregory had promised to leave his wife multiple times, but never did. She told me Jessica knew perfectly well he was married and didn't care. She told me she had seen Jessica crying in the office when Gregory canceled their plans to be with his family. And she told me she was willing to testify if necessary because she could no longer be complicit in so much deceit. With all that information in my hands, I made the hardest decision. I contacted Catherine Romero. I sent her an anonymous message through Facebook asking to meet. At first, she hesitated, thinking it was some kind of scam. But when I told her I had information about her husband she needed to know, she agreed. We met at a cafe far from our neighborhoods. Catherine was an elegant woman of 48 with perfectly styled hair and expensive clothes. When she sat in front of me, I saw the fear in her eyes, fear of hearing something that would confirm what she had probably suspected for years. I showed her everything. The photos, the receipts, the messages, the emails. She looked at them one by one in absolute silence. Tears began to fall down her cheeks, but she didn't make a sound. When she finished looking at everything, she looked up at me and asked with a broken voice, "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you deserve to know the truth," I replied. "And because my son deserves it too. We have both been deceived by the same 2 people. We both deserve justice." Catherine closed her eyes and took several deep breaths. Then she opened them and looked at me with a determination that hadn't been there before. "I am going to file for divorce," she said, "and I am going to name Jessica Miller as the other woman in the legal documents. I want her name recorded publicly. I want everyone to know what kind of woman she is." I gave her copies of everything I had. She hugged me before leaving. 2 women who didn't know each other, united by the pain of betrayal. Jessica entered my son's life like an elegant hurricane. From the first moment I met her, I knew she was one of those women used to getting what she wants regardless of who she has to step on along the way. She was 31 when Ryan introduced her to me. tall, slim, always dressed in designer clothes that cost more than 3 months of my rent. Her black hair fell perfectly over her shoulders. Her makeup was flawless. Her nails always done. Everything about her screamed success, power, control. She worked as a marketing manager at a multinational corporation. She earned $6,000 a month, maybe more. She drove a brand new car. She lived in a modern apartment in the best part of the city before marrying Ryan. She spoke 3 languages. She had traveled half the world. And most importantly, she knew exactly how to use all that to make others feel small beside her. The first time she came to my house was 2 months after meeting Ryan. He was so excited, so proud to introduce me to this successful woman who had taken notice of him. I prepared meatloaf, my son's favorite dish, and laid out my best tablecloth. I cleaned the house until it shone. I wanted to make a good impression. Jessica walked into my house, and her gaze scanned everything in 3 seconds. I saw how she evaluated my old furniture, my walls that needed painting, my linoleum floor. She said nothing, but she didn't need to. Her expression said it all. Disapproval, pity, superiority. "What a cozy house," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can tell it has many years of history." History. That was her polite way of saying old, saying poor, saying insufficient. During the meal, she spoke almost exclusively to Ryan. She asked me polite but superficial questions. "How long have you lived here, Margaret? Do you work currently? How is your health?" Every question sounded like she was following a social protocol rather than having genuine interest. And when I answered, she nodded distractedly while checking her phone. She praised the food, but barely took 2 bites. "It's delicious, but I'm watching my figure for a friend's wedding next month," she explained, as if I, with my extra weight and my body worn by years of hard work, needed that reminder of our differences. After that first visit, Jessica found reasons not to return. She always had work, always had commitments, always had something more important to do. And slowly, without Ryan realizing, she started to change our family dynamic. "Babe, why don't you invite your mom to a restaurant instead of going to her house?" she suggested. "It would be more comfortable for her. She wouldn't have to cook." But what she really meant was that it would be more comfortable for her, that she wouldn't have to sit on my old furniture or eat off my chipped plates. "Honey, your mom looks tired. Maybe we should cut the visit short," she said with fake concern. What she really wanted was to shorten the time Ryan spent with me, because every minute with me was a minute he didn't dedicate to her. "Ryan, love, remember we have that important dinner with my bosses tomorrow," she reminded him just when he was about to call me or visit me. There was always something more important, always a reason for him to put me second, and it worked. Gradually, my son started to pull away. The weekly visits became bi-weekly, then monthly. The daily calls reduced to twice a week, then to 1. The family Sundays we had had for years disappeared completely. Jessica had gotten what she wanted, having Ryan completely to herself, without the interference of his poor, old mother. When they got married, Jessica stopped faking even the minimum courtesy. At the wedding, they seated me at a table in the back, far from the head table where they were. Emily protested, but Ryan said Jessica had organized everything and it had to stay that way. In the family photos, Jessica made sure to stand as far away from me as possible, and when the time came for the dancing, she danced with her father, with Ryan, with her friends, but she never asked me to dance with my son. The following years were a masterclass in subtle cruelty. Jessica never yelled at me, never openly insulted me, never did anything Ryan could point to as obvious mistreatment. Her cruelty was more sophisticated than that. It was the kind of cruelty that makes you doubt yourself, makes you wonder if you are being too sensitive, makes you feel guilty for feeling hurt. When I gave them a gift, there was always a comment. "Oh, Margaret, what a nice gesture. I'm going to keep it with much affection," which meant she was going to throw it in the trash as soon as I left. Once I knitted a scarf for Ryan that took me 3 weeks to finish. Jessica said, "How sweet, honey. Your mom thinks you're still 5 years old." And she laughed. Ryan laughed with her. I swallowed my tears. When I cooked for them, which was rarely because Jessica almost never invited me, she always compared my food to expensive restaurants. "It's tasty, Margaret. Although obviously it's not like the steak at that bistro downtown that charges $150 a plate. The message was clear. Your food is inferior. You are inferior. When I spoke about my health problems, Jessica sighed with barely concealed impatience. Oh, Margaret, you always have something. Did you go to the doctor? Did you take your medicine? Because you know Ryan worries a lot when you get sick, and that stresses him at work. As if my diabetes and arthritis were inconveniences, I had chosen to annoy them. When I mentioned my financial difficulties, Jessica said things like, "Have you thought about selling your house and moving to something smaller? You could save on expenses." What she was really suggesting was that I go live in a nursing home or a tiny room where she wouldn't have to see me or think about me. But the worst, the absolute worst, was how she manipulated Ryan. Jessica was a master at playing the victim. Every time I tried to talk to my son about how I felt, she cried, "Ryan, your mom hates me. No matter what I do, it's never enough for her. I am so tired of trying to earn her approval." And Ryan, my son who had once been my best friend, called me to scold me. "Mom, why can't you get along with Jessica? She is making an effort. Why do you have to be so critical? Why can't you just be happy for me?" I tried to explain. I tried to make him see how she treated me when he wasn't present. But Jessica was too smart. She never left evidence. There were never witnesses. It was my word against hers. And he believed her. "Mom, I think you're jealous," he told me once. "You're jealous because I'm not just yours anymore. Because I have a wife who also needs my attention. You need to learn to share." Those words destroyed me. Jealous? I wasn't jealous. I was hurt. I was tired. I was being systematically humiliated and pushed away from my own son by a woman who had decided I had no place in her perfect life. Jessica controlled everything. She controlled when Ryan visited me. She controlled how much money he could give me if I needed it. She controlled what information he shared with me about their lives. She controlled our phone conversations because she was always there, in the background, listening, ready to intervene if I said something she didn't like. Once, 3 years ago, I got seriously ill. I had a kidney infection that left me in the hospital for a week. Emily was with me every day. Ryan came twice in 7 days. And both times he stayed less than an hour because Jessica called him saying she needed him at home for something urgent. When I got out of the hospital, I needed help for 2 weeks. I couldn't cook. I could barely walk to the bathroom. Emily took leave from her job to take care of me. I asked Ryan to help me just a few days. Jessica said it was impossible, that they had too much work, that I should hire someone, as if I had money to pay a nurse. When I recovered enough strength to return to cleaning houses, because I needed the money, Jessica told Ryan I was exaggerating my illness to get attention. If she can already work cleaning houses, she wasn't as sick as she said, she argued, and he believed her. During these 11 years, Jessica had built an image of me in my son's mind, the image of a dramatic, manipulative older woman who faked illnesses to get attention, who was never satisfied, who was a burden. And she had done it so gradually, so systematically, that Ryan didn't realize she had completely changed his way of seeing me. I went from being the mother he adored, the woman who had worked 3 jobs to pay for his education, who had given up everything to give him a better life, to being a problem he had to manage, an obligation, a weight. And Jessica enjoyed every second of that power. I saw it in her eyes every time Ryan defended her instead of me. I saw it in her smile when she cut our visits short. I saw it in her body language when we were together, always positioning herself between Ryan and me, literally putting her body as a physical barrier between mother and son. Jessica's attacks escalated over the years until they became unbearable. What had started as subtle comments and looks of disdain transformed into calculated humiliations that left me breathless. And the worst was that she always made sure to do it in such a way that I seemed like the one overreacting if I complained. 2 years ago, on my 67th birthday, Ryan invited me to dinner at an expensive Italian restaurant. I put on my best dress, the same one I had worn to his wedding, which already looked worn. When I arrived at the restaurant, Jessica looked me up and down and said loudly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "Oh, Margaret, that dress is the same one you wore 5 years ago. Haven't you thought about updating your wardrobe? There are stores with very nice and cheap clothes. I can take you one day if you want." The word cheap echoed in my ears. People at nearby tables turned to look at me. I felt my face turn red with shame. Ryan said nothing. He simply changed the subject, as if his wife hadn't just publicly humiliated me. I spent the entire dinner with a lump in my throat, unable to enjoy the food that cost more than what I spent on feeding myself for a whole week. A year and a half ago, I had to ask Ryan to lend me $300 because my landlord had raised the rent and I didn't have enough to cover it that month. I promised him I would pay it back in 2 months when I received extra payment from a cleaning job I had secured. Jessica heard the conversation and laughed. A short, dry, cruel laugh. "Ryan, honey, your mom always needs money. Don't you think it's strange? What does she spend it on? Because with $1,200 pension, it should be perfectly enough if she knew how to budget." I froze. Ryan hesitated. I saw the doubt in his eyes. Jessica continued. "Honey, we have expenses too. We can't be eternally subsidizing your mom. She needs to learn to live with what she has." Ryan gave me the $300, but his look had changed. It was no longer concern for my situation. It was annoyance. As if I were an irresponsible child asking for money for whims. I paid back every cent in exactly 2 months, working overtime that made my knees swell so much I could barely walk. When I handed him the money, Jessica said, "See, Margaret, you could do it. It was just a matter of trying a little harder." As if I hadn't been trying every day of my life. A year ago, during Christmas, Jessica organized a dinner at her house. She invited her family, her friends, co-workers. I thought I would also be invited because I was her husband's mother. I waited for the invitation, but it never came. When I asked Ryan, he told me uncomfortably, "Mom, it's just that Jessica wants it to be something intimate, just her close people." I wasn't a close person to my own son. That was clear. I spent that Christmas alone in my house, eating leftover casserole that Mrs. Samantha had given me. Emily tried to come, but she was sick with the flu and didn't want to infect me. I watched through the window as neighboring families celebrated together, while I wondered at what moment I had lost my son. 9 months ago, Jessica began making comments about my health that clearly sought to plant the idea that I was a burden. "Margaret, have you thought about a nursing home? Not the bad ones. There are some very nice ones where they take care of you well and you have the company of people your age. It would be less lonely for you." She said it with that fake smile, as if she really cared about my well-being and wasn't trying to convince Ryan to send me away. "Jessica, I am fine in my house," I replied. "I don't need anyone to take care of me. I can fend for myself." "For now," she answered. "But you have to think about the future. What happens if you fall and there's no one to help you? If your diabetes gets worse, you wouldn't want to be a burden to Ryan, right?" That word, burden. She used it constantly. Every time she saw me, she found a way to slip it into the conversation. "We don't want you to be a burden. You must take care of yourself so as not to become a burden. Parents who really love their children don't become a burden to them." The message was clear. I was a weight she wanted to eliminate. 6 months ago, Jessica started openly criticizing my way of speaking, my education, my manners. We were at a cafe, and I asked for a soda. Jessica laughed and told the waiter, "She means sparkling water." "Excuse me, my mother-in-law isn't very familiar with the correct terms." The waiter looked at me with pity. I wanted to disappear. "Jessica, I just wanted a soda," I tried to explain. "Yes, but sparkling water sounds more polite, don't you think? It's important to speak correctly, especially in places like this." Places like this. Expensive places where she belonged and I didn't. 5 months ago, I discovered that Jessica had told her friends that I had abandoned my children when they were little to go with another man. An absolute and monstrous lie. I found out because one of her friends, who turned out to be a distant cousin of my neighbor, told the story, and my neighbor let me know. When I confronted Ryan, he said it must have been a misunderstanding. Jessica wouldn't say something like that. "Mom," her friend probably misunderstood. But I knew it hadn't been any misunderstanding. Jessica was destroying my reputation. She was planting stories about me to justify her mistreatment, so that when she finally eliminated me completely from Ryan's life, he would have reasons to believe I didn't deserve to be there. 4 months ago, Jessica started denying me access to basic information about my own son. When I called and she answered, she told me Ryan wasn't available. When I asked when I could call again, she said, "Margaret, he'll call you when he has time. He's very busy." But the calls never came unless I insisted multiple times. When I arrived to visit him without warning, something I rarely did because it was far and transportation cost me $5 I didn't always have, Jessica opened the door with a face of annoyance. "Margaret, you should call before coming. Ryan isn't here, and I have work to do." She left me standing at the door, as if I were an annoying salesperson, not her husband's mother. 3 months ago, just before I discovered her secret, Jessica did something that almost broke me completely. It was Ryan's birthday, and I had saved for 2 months to buy him a gift. It wasn't a big deal, just a shirt I saw in a store that I thought would fit him well. It cost $40 that I needed for other things, but I wanted to give something nice to my son. I arrived at his house with the gift wrapped in paper I had saved from previous years because I couldn't pay for new paper. Jessica opened the door. "Oh, Margaret, what a surprise. We didn't know you were coming, but I had sent a message to Ryan telling him I would stop by in the afternoon." I went in and gave the gift to my son. He opened it and smiled. "Thanks, Mom. It's nice." Jessica approached, took the shirt, and inspected it. "It's regular cotton. Ryan only wears Egyptian cotton because he has sensitive skin. But thanks for the gesture, Margaret. It's the thought that counts." "No." And she left the shirt on a chair with a carelessness that made it clear it would end up in the donation pile. I had spent $40. $40 that meant eating rice and beans for a week, and she had discarded it like trash in a matter of seconds. That night I cried myself to sleep. I cried for all the years of accumulated humiliations. I cried for the son I had lost at the hands of a cruel woman. I cried for the life I had lived, thinking my sacrifices had been worth it, just to discover my son no longer valued me. But it was just after that birthday that everything changed. It was 2 days later when Jessica asked me to clean her study. It was then that I found the box, when I discovered her secret, when the universe finally gave me the tools I needed to defend myself. During those 3 weeks after the discovery, Jessica continued attacking me without knowing I already had her life in my hands. She criticized me for my clothes. She made fun of my way of speaking. She told Ryan I was spending too much on medicines and probably didn't need them all. She suggested again that I should move to a nursing home. Every attack was one more nail in her own coffin. The moment everything changed arrived in the most unexpected way. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks before that dinner that would change everything. Jessica had called me in the morning. Something unusual because she almost never contacted me directly. Her voice sounded sweet, too sweet, which immediately put me on alert. "Margaret, I need a huge favor. Ryan and I have an important meeting today and the house is a mess. Could you come clean the study? I'd pay you $50. I know you normally charge that for a whole house, but I really need urgent help." $50. Money I needed desperately because the previous month I had to buy more expensive medicines and had come up short. I swallowed my pride, as I had done so many times before, and accepted. "Sure, Jessica. What time do you need me to go?" "Perfect. Come around 2. We won't be there, but I'll leave the key under the mat. The study is on the 2nd floor. It's the room at the end of the hall. I just need you to dust, vacuum, and organize a bit. There are boxes in the closet you can arrange better." I arrived exactly at 2. The house was empty and silent. I climbed the stairs slowly because my knees protested with every step. The study was large, with an expensive wooden desk, shelves full of books that had probably never been read, and a huge closet that occupied an entire wall. I started by dusting the shelves. Then I vacuumed the carpet. Finally, I opened the closet to organize the boxes Jessica had mentioned. There were 5 cardboard boxes stacked in the back. I took the first one and lowered it carefully. It was sealed with tape. I set it aside and took the second. This one was open and full of old papers, bills, unimportant documents. The third box was a shoebox, smaller, lighter. When I lowered it from the shelf, the lid slipped and the box fell to the floor. Its entire contents spilled onto the carpet like an explosive puzzle. Photographs. Dozens of photographs. And receipts. So many receipts. I bent down with difficulty, ignoring the pain in my back, and started picking everything up. I was going to put it back in the box without looking, but then my eyes caught something in one of the photos, Jessica. And a man who wasn't my son. My hands started shaking when I took that photograph. Jessica and that man coming out of a hotel? He had his shirt open, no tie. She wore a tight red dress I had never seen her wear at home. They were holding hands, smiling. The photo had a date in the bottom right corner. The 15th of March, 2019. 6 years ago. I picked up another photo. The two of them on a beach. Him with his arm around her. Another one in an elegant restaurant, toasting with glasses of wine. Another where they were kissing in front of what seemed to be the Eiffel Tower. Each photo was a stab to the heart. Not for me, but for my son, who had no idea what his wife had been doing. Then I saw the receipts. The first one I picked up was from the Hotel Fontainebleau in Miami Beach. 2 nights. Deluxe room with ocean view, $1,200. Under the names Jessica Miller and Gregory Stevens. The date, March 2019. The same date as the first photo. I kept picking up receipts with hands that were now shaking uncontrollably. The Plaza in New York. $2,000 for 3 nights. Jessica Miller and Gregory Stevens. The Peninsula in Chicago. $1,800 for 2 nights. The same names. There were dozens. Literally dozens of receipts from expensive hotels in different cities. Miami, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all with the same 2 names. I sat on the floor of the study, surrounded by all that evidence, and felt the world move under my feet. My mind worked quickly, processing what I was seeing. Jessica had been cheating on Ryan for years, and she had kept the proofs as if they were precious memories of a legitimate relationship. I searched through the papers until I found one with information about Gregory Stevens. It was a copy of a corporate document, a job promotion. Gregory Stevens, VP of Sales, 52 years old, the same company where Jessica worked. Of course. The work trips, the meetings that lasted days, the generous bonuses she always mentioned. Everything had been an elaborate lie. I cried, sitting there on that expensive floor. In that house my son had bought with so much effort for the woman who betrayed him. I cried for him. I cried for all the years he had spent defending her while she lied to him blatantly. I cried for the times he had chosen her over me, not knowing she didn't deserve his loyalty or his love. But after crying, something changed inside me. The sadness transformed into something stronger. Determination. Righteous anger. This woman had destroyed my relationship with my son. She had humiliated me for years. She had made me feel less insignificant, disposable. And all that time, she was the liar. She was the traitor. She was the one who had no right to be in our family. I took out my phone with trembling hands and started photographing everything. Every receipt, every photo, every document. It took me almost an hour to document everything. My phone filled with more than 100 images. When I finished, I put everything back in the box exactly as it was. I closed the lid. I placed it on the shelf in the same position where it had been. I organized the other boxes. I finished cleaning the study as if nothing had happened. When I left that house at 5 p.m, I was no longer the same woman who had entered. Now I had power. I had information. I had the truth. But I knew I couldn't simply run to tell Ryan what I had found. Jessica would deny everything. She would say I had invented the photos, that I had forged the receipts. She would make me look like the bitter and jealous mother-in-law willing to lie to destroy her marriage. And Ryan, my son, who for years had chosen to believe her over me, would probably believe her again. I needed more. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed a case so solid that not even Jessica with all her manipulation could escape. That same night, after saving the photos in 3 different places, my phone, a USB drive, and the cloud, I started my investigation. I searched the internet for information about Gregory Stevens. It wasn't hard to find him. He had profiles on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. His life was there, exposed for anyone who wanted to see it. LinkedIn showed his professional career, vice president of sales at the same company where Jessica worked. He had been there for 25 years, climbing the ranks. His photo showed an attractive man of 52 with graying hair and a confident smile. The same man from the photographs with Jessica. But it was Facebook where I found the most important information. Gregory Stevens was married. His relationship status clearly said, married to Catherine Romero. His profile was full of family photos. Gregory with his wife on their 20th anniversary. Gregory with his 3 children at a soccer game. Gregory on family vacation in Cancun. A seemingly perfect family that had no idea of the double life he led. 3 children, 17, 14, and 11 years old, according to the photos. Children who were going to suffer when the truth came to light. A wife who had dedicated 20 years of her life to a man who cheated on her. I felt a pang of pain for that unknown family. They were also victims of this. During the following days, I became a detective. I spent $500. I didn't have to hire a private investigator. I found one on the internet who offered discreet services and reasonable prices. His name was Sam Reynolds, and he worked from a small office downtown. When I met with him and told him the situation, he looked at me with a mix of professionalism and compassion. Mrs. Hayes, I understand perfectly what you need. I'm going to get you additional proof, call logs, text messages if possible, testimonies, everything you need so your son can't deny the truth. I gave him copies of the photos and receipts. I gave him the names. I told him everything I knew. How much will it cost? I asked, fearing the answer. Normally I charge $1,000 for a case like this, he replied. But I see you aren't doing this for revenge. You're doing it to protect your son. I'll charge you $500, and you can pay me in 2 parts, $250 now and $250 when I hand you the complete report. I gave him the first $250 I had taken from my emergency savings account, money I was saving for some medical urgency. But this was more urgent. This was saving my son from a life based on lies. Sam worked for 2 weeks. Every few days he called me to give me updates. Mrs. Hayes. I got the call logs. Jessica and Gregory talk on average 2 hours a week. Mrs. Hayes. I found someone who worked with them and is willing to talk. Mrs. Hayes. I followed them for 3 days and have new photos of them together. When we finally met for him to hand me the complete report, I could barely breathe from anticipation. Sam put a thick folder full of documents on the table. Here is everything, Mrs. Hayes. And I have to tell you, this is one of the clearest cases I have investigated. There is no doubt whatsoever about what is happening. I opened the folder and started reviewing. There were new photos of Jessica and Gregory leaving a downtown hotel just a week ago. There were call logs showing conversations that lasted hours. There were copies of work emails that were anything but professional. I can't stop thinking about the last time we were together. I count the days until our next trip. I love you, even though I know I shouldn't. And most importantly, there was a testimony. Lauren, Gregory's secretary, had agreed to talk. Her statement was typed and signed. Lauren's statement was devastating. Sam had gotten her to write down everything she knew and sign it. I sat in that small office and read every word, with my heart beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. I, Lauren Smith, have worked as executive secretary for Gregory Stevens for 8 years. During this time, I have witnessed the extramarital relationship he maintains with Jessica Miller, marketing manager of the same company. The affair began approximately 7 years ago, when Mrs. Miller had been working at the company for only a year. I have been forced to lie repeatedly to cover their meetings, booking hotel rooms under the pretext of business trips, canceling real meetings so they could see each other, and lying to Mr. Reenkand, Stevens's wife, about his whereabouts on multiple occasions. I can no longer continue to be complicit in this deceit. I am willing to testify about what I have seen if necessary for the truth to come to light. My hands shook holding that paper. Sam watched me in silence, giving me time to process everything. Is she really willing to testify? I asked. Yes, Mrs. Hayes. I spoke at length with her. She is tired of lying. She says Mr. Stevens has put her in very uncomfortable situations, and she no longer wants to be part of this. She has her own conscience and her own children. She doesn't want to keep helping destroy families. I continued reviewing the folder. There were credit card statements Sam had obtained from sources he preferred not to reveal. They showed charges at the same hotels, on the same dates, both on Gregory's corporate card and Jessica's personal card. Dinners at expensive restaurants costing $300, $400, gifts at luxury jewelry stores. A clear and consistent pattern of shared expenses that only two people in an intimate relationship would have. How long have they been doing this? I asked, though I already knew part of the answer. According to Lauren Smith, the affair began 7 years ago. That would be in 2018. Your son married Jessica in 2017, correct? I nodded, feeling nauseous. So the affair began just a year after the wedding. But, Mrs. Hayes, there is something else you should know. Sam took another document from the folder. I found records suggesting Jessica and Gregory knew each other before she met your son. Both attended the same business conference in 2016. There are photos from that conference where they appear together in the same group. The world stopped for a moment. Jessica had met Gregory before meeting Ryan. What did that mean? Had the affair started even before the wedding? Or had she started the relationship with Gregory after getting married, but a previous connection already existed? I can't confirm if the affair started in 2016, Sam continued. Lauren Smith can only testify to what she saw since 2018. But the previous connection exists. That is a fact. I paid him the last $250 with trembling hands. I left that office with the folder under my arm, feeling like I was carrying a bomb, because that was exactly what I had, a bomb that was going to explode the lives of several people when I finally decided to detonate it. During the following days, I studied every document as if it were a final exam on which my life depended. I memorized dates, places, names. I organized everything chronologically. I made copies of the copies and stored them in different places. In my house, in Emily's house, in a safe deposit box I rented at a bank for $20 a month. But I still needed one more piece of the puzzle. I needed to talk to Catherine Romero, Gregory's wife. She deserved to know the truth as much as my son. And her testimony, her reaction, would be crucial for what I was planning. Finding her contact information wasn't difficult. Her Facebook profile was open to the public. I sent her a private message from a fake account I created specifically for this. I couldn't risk her knowing who I was before we met. Dear Catherine, I know this message will seem strange to you, but I need to talk to you urgently about your husband, Gregory. I have information you need to know. Please meet with me. I promise this is important and I am not lying to you. I just want to help you. I waited 3 days without a response. I thought she had ignored or blocked me. But then, on the 4th day, her answer arrived. Who are you? Why should I trust you? If you have information about my husband, tell me now or don't waste my time. I replied, I can't tell you by message. It is too delicate. Please meet me in a public place of your choice. I will show you physical proof of what I am telling you. After seeing it, you will decide what to do. 2 more days passed before she responded. Central Cafe. Tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon. I'll be at a table in the back. Bring what you say you have. I arrived at Central Cafe 15 minutes before 3. It was an elegant place downtown, with marble tables and expensive decor. I felt out of place with my simple clothes and my old bag, but I forced myself to walk with my head held high. I was the one who held the power now. I was the one who had the truth. Catherine Romero arrived exactly at 3. I recognized her immediately from her Facebook photos. She was an elegant woman of 48, slim, well-dressed, with brown hair, perfectly styled. She wore designer clothes and a watch that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. She sat in front of me with an expression of distrust mixed with curiosity. You must be the person who wrote to me, she said without preamble. I have only 30 minutes. Show me what you have or I'm leaving. I took the folder out of my bag and put it on the table. I opened it and started taking out the photographs one by one. The first one showed Gregory and Jessica leaving the hotel in Miami. Catherine looked at it, and her face went pale. Who is she? She asked with a tense voice. Her name is Jessica Miller. She is the marketing manager at the same company where your husband works, and she is my daughter-in-law. She is married to my son. Catherine's eyes widened. She took the photo with hands that were starting to shake. I took out another photo, and another, and one more. Catherine looked at them all in silence, tears beginning to pool in her eyes but not letting them fall yet. Then I took out the receipts. One by one, hotel after hotel, city after city, date after date. With every receipt she saw, Catherine's jaw tightened more. How long? She finally asked with a broken voice. At least 7 years. possibly more. Catherine closed her eyes. A tear finally rolled down her cheek, but she wiped it away quickly. When she opened her eyes again, there was something different in them. It wasn't vulnerability anymore. It was cold, calculated fury. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "What do you want from me?" "What do I want from you?" I replied honestly. "You deserve to know the truth. Your husband has been cheating on you for years. My son has also been deceived. We are both victims of the same two people. I thought you had a right to know. Does your son know?" she asked. "No, not yet. I haven't told him because Jessica would deny everything. She would say I invented the proof because I never accepted her. My son would probably believe her and not me. That's why I needed more evidence. That's why I looked for you." Catherine nodded slowly, processing everything. She took her coffee with trembling hands and drank slowly. "I have suspected for years," she said finally. "The constant trips, the calls at odd hours, the perfume on his clothes that wasn't mine, the excuses, always so many excuses, but every time I confronted him, he denied everything. He made me feel paranoid. He made me feel like I was crazy for even suggesting it. It's the same thing Jessica did to my son," I said. "She convinced him I was the problem, that I was jealous, that I invented things to cause problems in their marriage." Catherine stared at me. In that moment, two women from completely different worlds were united by the same pain, by the same betrayal. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I am going to tell my son the truth, but not yet. I am waiting for the right moment, a moment where Jessica cannot manipulate the situation, where the truth is so obvious that not even she can deny it. And you, what should I do? Whatever you consider right, these are copies of everything. Keep them. Use them if you need them. For divorce, for whatever, they are yours." Catherine took the folder and put it in her designer bag. She stood up, ready to leave. But before doing so, she looked at me one last time. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you for giving me this, for not letting me live in ignorance any longer. I am going to talk to my lawyer tomorrow. I am going to file for divorce. And I am going to ensure Jessica Miller's name is recorded in the legal documents as the other woman. I want her reputation to be destroyed as much as my husband's." "Will you let me know when you do it?" I asked. "Because when you file those papers, Gregory is going to tell Jessica, and when Jessica knows her secret is exposed, she's going to try to get ahead of the situation. She's going to try to tell her version to my son before I can do it." Catherine nodded. "I will let you know. I will give you time to talk to your son first. I will wait a week after filing the papers before they are officially served to Gregory. That will give you time." We said goodbye with a brief but meaningful hug. Two warriors in parallel battles, allies in the search for justice. During the next week, I waited. Catherine sent me a message. "Papers filed today. My lawyer says Gregory will receive them in exactly 7 days. Jessica Miller is officially named in the documents. Good luck." Now I had a deadline. 7 days to find the perfect moment to expose Jessica. 7 days to plan how to tell my son the truth in a way he couldn't deny or ignore. The following days were the hardest of my life. I had the whole truth in my hands, but I couldn't just drop that bomb without a plan. Jessica was too smart, too manipulative. If I went directly to Ryan with the proofs, she would find a way to flip the situation. She would say the photos were altered, that the receipts were fake, that I had hired someone to invent everything because I was desperate to destroy her marriage. And my son, who for 11 years had chosen to believe her over me, would probably do it once more. I needed a moment where she couldn't escape, where the truth was so obvious, so public, so irrefutable, that not even all her smooth talk could save her. And that moment arrived when Emily, my daughter, called me on Friday night. "Mom, Jessica is organizing a family dinner for next Saturday. Ryan just called to invite me. He says Jessica wants to gather the whole family, uncles, some cousins, us. He says she wants to strengthen family ties." My heart raced. Jessica never organized family dinners. She hated having my family in her house. Something was happening. And then I understood. The divorce papers. Gregory would receive them in 3 days. Jessica didn't know yet, but she must feel something was approaching. Maybe Gregory had been acting weird. Maybe his secretary Lauren had suddenly quit. Maybe Jessica felt her perfect world was about to wobble and wanted to make sure she had Ryan completely on her side before that happened. "Are you going, Mom?" Emily asked. "Yes," I replied. "I am definitely going." I spent the next few days preparing. I took out the clearest photograph of Jessica and Gregory, the one from the hotel in Miami. I put it in the pocket of my best dress. I mentally reviewed everything I knew, all the proof I had. I practiced in front of the mirror what I would say, how I would say it. I needed to be calm. I needed to be cold. I needed to have absolute control of my emotions because I knew Jessica would try to make me explode, make me lose my composure, make me look like the crazy one. Saturday arrived. I dressed carefully, putting on the same dress Jessica had criticized on my birthday. If she was going to humiliate me for my clothes, let her do it. It would be the last time she did. I arrived at her house at 7 in the evening. Several cars were already parked outside. Uncle Arthur, Aunt Sarah, some cousins. Emily arrived just behind me, and we walked together to the door. Jessica opened with a huge smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore an expensive cream-colored dress, jewels that shone under the light, perfect makeup. The image of the successful hostess, "Margaret, so glad you came." And Emily, gorgeous as always. "Come in, come in. Ryan is in the office finishing some things up." We entered. The house smelled of expensive food, probably from some gourmet restaurant Jessica had ordered from. The dining table was set elegantly. There was wine, flowers, candles, everything calculated perfectly to impress. The other guests arrived. When we were all seated, there were 12 of us around that table. Jessica sat at the head, like the queen of her kingdom, Ryan by her side, smiling, with no idea of the storm that was about to unleash. The dinner began with light conversation. Jessica controlled everything, directing the conversations, making sure everyone saw her as the perfect hostess, the perfect wife, the daughter-in-law doing everything possible to keep the family together. I ate in silence, observing, waiting for my moment, and then it arrived. Jessica stood up with her wine glass in hand. "I want to propose a toast," she announced with a clear voice. We all raised our glasses. I knew something was coming. I could see it in her eyes, that spark of malice I knew so well. "I want to toast to family," she began, "to the bonds that unite us, to the support we give one another." She paused, her eyes meeting mine, and then she said it. "To the mother-in-law who only landed a husband because he needed the money." The silence fell like thunder. All eyes turned to me. Jessica remained standing, holding her glass, with that cruel smile waiting to see me destroyed. This was her moment, her last attempt to humiliate me, to put me in my place, to remind everyone I was less than her. But I had been waiting for this. I had been preparing for this. I stood up slowly, with all the calm in the world. My knees didn't shake, my hands didn't shake. My voice, when it came out, was firm as steel. "That is actually your area of expertise, isn't it?" I said, looking her directly in the eyes. "Tell the family about that work trip to Miami. You didn't go alone, did you? And your boss was there too." I saw her face change, from triumph to shock, from shock to pure terror. I put my hand in my pocket and took out the photograph. I unfolded it with slow, deliberate movements. I placed it on the table where everyone could see it. "This photo is 6 years old," I continued. 6 years in which you told my son you traveled alone for work. Gregory Stevens, your boss, married, with 3 children. Ryan took the photo with hands that were starting to shake. Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her glass slipped from her hands and crashed against the floor, spilling red wine like blood on the pristine floor. "I have the hotel receipts," I continued. "I have the flight logs. I have the emails. I have the testimony of his secretary. I have everything, Jessica." Emily let out a gasp. Uncle Arthur stood up abruptly. Aunt Sarah brought her hands to her mouth. The cousins looked at each other, not knowing what to do. "Ryan, I can explain," Jessica began with a desperate voice. "There is nothing to explain." I cut her off. "Gregory Stevens has been married to Catherine Romero for 20 years. She just filed for divorce papers. And your name, Jessica, is officially recorded in those legal documents as the other woman." Jessica's face completely crumpled. She stepped back, then another step, stumbling over her own chair. 2 weeks ago, I met with Catherine Romero. I continued relentlessly. I gave her copies of everything. Of the photos, the receipts, the emails. She cried in front of me when she saw what her husband had been doing. 20 years of marriage destroyed. 3 children who are going to suffer when they know the truth. All because of your selfishness, Jessica. Ryan kept looking at the photo, his eyes moving from the image to his wife's face. When he finally spoke, his voice came out as a broken whisper. How long? 7 years, I answered for Jessica, who seemed unable to speak. The affair began a year after you got married. Maybe even before. They met at a business conference in 2016. Before she met you. You are a liar, Ryan whispered. But he wasn't saying it to me. He was saying it to Jessica. All this time, every trip, every meeting, every time you came home late. It was all a lie. Jessica shook her head frantically. No, Ryan, please, your mother is inventing this. This is a trap. Do not speak about my mother, Ryan roared. Standing up so abruptly his chair fell backward. His voice resonated throughout the dining room. Do not ever mention her again. For 11 years you made her look like the problem. For 11 years you convinced me she was bitter, controlling, making our lives impossible. And I believed you. My God. I believed every damn word. Ryan. Love, please. Don't call me love, he shouted. You have no right. You have no damn right. Jessica backed up until her back hit the wall. She was trapped, physically and emotionally. Her expensive dress was wrinkled. Her makeup was starting to run with tears. Her perfect hairdo was coming undone. The entire facade destroyed in a matter of minutes. Gregory is going to receive the divorce papers on Monday, I said with a calm voice. When that happens, he will know you were named officially. His wife wants your name recorded publicly. She wants everyone to know exactly what kind of woman you are. This isn't going to end like this, Jessica said suddenly, and her voice changed from pleading to threatening. She pointed her finger at me. You are going to pay for this, Margaret. I will destroy you. I am going to tell everyone you invented all this, that you manipulated the proofs, that you are desperate to ruin my marriage. I held her gaze without blinking. You already did your best tonight, Jessica, and look where you are now. Those were the words that broke her completely. She let out a choked scream, half sob, half roar of rage, and ran out of the dining room. We heard her heels down the hall, the front door opening violently, the engine of her car starting. The tires screeched against the pavement as she drove away. Absolute silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Ryan remained standing, with the photograph still in his hand, looking at the empty space where Jessica had been seconds before. Emily was the first to move. She got up and walked towards me, hugged me tight. Mom, she whispered. You did it. The other guests began to react. Uncle Arthur went out and returned with whiskey. He gave it to Ryan without saying a word. Aunt Sarah approached me and squeezed my hand. The cousins murmured among themselves, processing what they had just witnessed. Ryan finally moved. He left the photograph on the table and walked towards me. He knelt in front of my chair and took my hands. His eyes were red, his face wet with tears. Mom, he said with a destroyed voice, forgive me. Please forgive me. For all these years. For not listening to you. For defending her. For making you feel like you were the problem. For everything. The tears finally rolled down my cheeks. After years of holding them back, of swallowing the pain, of staying strong, finally I allowed myself to cry. I squeezed my son's hands between mine. You are already forgiven, son. You always were. Ryan rested his forehead against our joined hands and cried like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a child. He cried for the wasted years, for the betrayal, for having been blind to the truth for so long. Emily knelt on the other side and hugged us both. We stayed like that, the 3 of us, rebuilding in that moment what Jessica had spent 11 years destroying. The guests began to say goodbye discreetly. Everyone approached to hug me before leaving. Uncle Arthur whispered in my ear, "We always knew something wasn't right with that woman. I'm glad the truth finally came out." Aunt Sarah kissed my forehead. "You are stronger than any of us imagined, Margaret." When the house was empty, only Ryan, Emily, and I remained sitting in that destroyed dining room. The unfinished plates of food, the spilled wine, the stained tablecloth, the physical remains of a night that had changed everything. Tell me everything from the beginning, Ryan said after a long silence. I need to know it all, and I told him. Every detail. From the moment I found the box to my meeting with Catherine Romero, from hiring the private investigator to saving the proofs in 3 different places, I told him about the 7 years of deceit, about the expensive hotels, about the emails, about everything. Ryan listened in silence, his face paler by the minute. When I finished, he remained silent for several minutes, processing everything. I am going to file for divorce, he finally said, with a cold and determined voice. Tomorrow I am going to talk to a lawyer, and I am not going to leave her anything. Absolutely nothing. She is going to fight, I warned. She is going to say I manipulated everything, that I fabricated the proofs. She is going to try to paint me as the villain. Let her try, Ryan replied. I have the original proofs. I have the investigator's report. I have Catherine Romero willing to testify. And I have 11 years of messages where Jessica lied to me constantly about her trips. He stood up and walked to the window. You know what's the worst of all this, Mom? It's not just the cheating. It's that during all these years she made you look like the problem. She humiliated you. She pushed you away from me, and I let her do it. I was complicit in your suffering because I was too blind to see the truth. You are not responsible for Jessica's manipulations, I said softly. She is very good at what she does. She deceives. She manipulates. She controls. That is her nature. But I am your son, he replied with a broken voice. I should have protected you. I should have listened to you. Instead, I failed you in the worst way possible. Emily stood up and walked to her brother. She put a hand on his shoulder. Now you know. Now you can make things right. That is what matters. That night I stayed at Ryan's house. None of us wanted to be alone. We slept little. Ryan spent most of the night reviewing all the documents I had given him. Every photo, every receipt, every email. With every new proof he saw, his jaw tightened more. Jessica didn't return that night, nor did she call. Her silence was deafening. Sunday morning, Ryan began making calls. First to a divorce lawyer a friend recommended, then to his bank to protect his accounts. Then to the company where both worked to inform them of the situation and ask to be transferred to another office so he wouldn't have to see her. On Monday, just as Catherine Romero had promised, Gregory Stevens received the divorce papers. Sam, my investigator, called me to confirm it. Mrs. Hayes, Gregory received the papers this morning. According to my sources, he went pale when he read Jessica's name in the documents. He ran out of his office and hasn't returned. An hour later, Jessica finally called Ryan. I was there when he answered. He put it on speaker so Emily and I could hear. Ryan, please, I need to talk to you. Her voice sounded desperate. Gregory just received the divorce papers. His wife named me. This is going to become public. I need you to listen to me. I need to explain. There is nothing to explain, Ryan replied with a cold voice. My lawyer already prepared the divorce papers. You are going to receive them tomorrow. And just like Catherine Romero did with her husband, I am also going to name you publicly as the adulterer. Your name is going to be recorded. Ryan, please. Gregory Stevens has 3 children who are going to find out what their father did. My mother, who is 69 years old and has worked her whole life until her knees hurt, had to be the one to discover your betrayal. Do you have any idea of the pain you have caused? Jessica began to cry on the other end of the line. I love you, Ryan. I know I made mistakes, but I love you. You don't know what love is. He cut her off. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't spend 7 years cheating while destroying its partner's relationship with his own mother. Do not contact me again unless it is through lawyers. And he hung up. His hands were shaking, but his face showed determination. The following days were a whirlwind. Jessica tried to call several times more, but Ryan never answered. She received the divorce papers on Tuesday and, according to Ryan's lawyer, she collapsed when the courier handed them to her. She tried to negotiate, but Ryan was inflexible. 0 concessions, 0 negotiations, only divorce and complete separation. The news began to spread. In the office, everyone found out. Jessica's colleagues began to treat her differently, some with pity, others with contempt. Gregory was demoted from his position as vice president. The company couldn't afford the scandal of having someone in a position of power who had had an affair with a subordinate. Jessica resigned 2 weeks later because the environment had become unbearable. Catherine Romero called me a month after the incident. "Margaret, I wanted to thank you again. My divorce is moving forward. My children are in therapy, processing everything, but they are going to be okay. And I am finally free from a marriage that was a lie." "How are your kids?" I asked. "Hurting, angry, confused. But with time they will heal. The truth hurts, but it is better than living a lie." She was right. The truth had hurt. It had destroyed families. It had exposed secrets that had been buried for years. But it was better than continuing to live in deceit. Ryan started therapy to process everything. He asked for my forgiveness 1,000 times more. I gave it to him every time. We began to rebuild our relationship slowly. He started visiting me twice a week. He called me every day. He helped me financially without me having to ask, depositing $500 extra each month so I wouldn't have to keep cleaning houses with my destroyed knees. "Mom, I should have done this years ago," he told me when I tried to reject the money. "I should have taken care of you like you took care of me all your life. Let me make up for at least a little of the lost time." Emily became a fundamental pillar. She had seen everything from the beginning, but hadn't been able to do anything because Ryan wouldn't listen to her. Now the three of us were united again, the family Jessica had tried to destroy but had survived. 3 months after the incident, I was in my garden, watering my tomato plants, when I heard a car stop in front of my house. I looked up and saw Jessica getting out of a taxi. She looked completely different. No makeup, simple clothes, unstyled hair, eyes red and swollen. She walked towards me slowly. I stayed where I was, hose still in hand, waiting. "Margaret," she said with a hoarse voice, "I need to talk to you." "We have nothing to talk about, Jessica. Please, just 5 minutes." I turned off the water and stared at her. "Speak." "I lost everything," she began, tears rolling down her cheeks. "My job, my marriage, my reputation. Gregory blocked me on everything. Ryan won't answer me. I have no one." "You reaped what you sowed," I replied without emotion. I know, and I accept it. But I need you to understand. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just protecting my secret. And the only way I knew was to push you away from Ryan. You humiliated me for 11 years. You made me feel less. You destroyed my relationship with my son. And now you come to ask me, what exactly? Forgiveness? Compassion? Jessica covered her face with her hands and sobbed. "I don't expect your forgiveness. I just needed to tell you I'm sorry, that you were right, that I was cruel and ruthless, that you deserved respect and I never gave it to you." I watched her cry without feeling anything, not satisfaction for seeing her destroyed, not pity for her situation, just emptiness. "Get out of my house, Jessica, and don't come back." She nodded between sobs, turned around, and left. I watched her get into the taxi and drive away. And that was the last time I saw her. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Jessica received nothing because she had signed a prenup that Ryan, thank God, had insisted on making before getting married. She tried to fight, but her lawyer told her she had no case. The infidelity was documented. The proofs were irrefutable. Ryan began to rebuild his life. He moved to a smaller apartment. He started going out with friends again. He even started dating someone new 6 months later. A woman named Samantha, who was a teacher like Emily, and who treated me with the respect I always deserved from the first moment I met her. I also began to heal. The constant visits from my children filled the void I had felt for years. My house stopped being a lonely place and became a home full of laughter and love again. I stopped cleaning houses because Ryan insisted I had worked enough in my life. A year after that dinner, the three of us, Ryan, Emily, and I, were sitting in my garden drinking coffee. Ryan took my hand. "Mom, I know I've told you 1,000 times, but I need to say it again. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for seeking the truth. Thank you for being stronger than any of us imagined. You saved me from a life based on lies." I squeezed his hand and smiled. "That is what mothers do, son. They protect their children. Always." I looked at my 2 children sitting beside me, the afternoon sun illuminating their faces, and I felt a peace I hadn't felt in over a decade. Jessica had tried to destroy my family. She had tried to erase me from my son's life. She had tried to make me feel invisible and insignificant. But she had failed, because true love, the love of a mother for her children, cannot be destroyed by any amount of manipulation or cruelty. It can be hurt, it can be tested, but it always finds a way to survive. And I had survived. More than that, I had won. Not because Jessica had been destroyed, but because my family was united again. Because the truth had prevailed, because justice, although late, had finally arrived. That night, when my children left and I stayed alone in my house, I sat in my favorite chair and looked at old photos of when Ryan and Emily were little. I remembered them when they called me every time they had a problem, when they looked for me to comfort them. When I was their whole world. I had lost that for 11 years. But now I had it back. And this time, no one was going to take it away from me. I put away the photos and turned off the lights. Tomorrow would be another day. A day without humiliations, without lies, without Jessica. A day where I could simply be Margaret Hayes, a 69-year-old mother who had fought for her family and had won. And as I fell asleep that night, with my aching knees but my heart at peace, I knew that every moment of pain had been worth it. Because in the end, the truth always wins. Always.